understand that and bring out the best in yourself.
Okay.
And then as an old CFO, I've
Right,
also got the
magnifying
magnifying glass. So together we can look at things that are important to you.
Right.
Be they numbers, be they key relationships, be they little things that are perhaps hampering you from getting done what you want to get done. But all these functions are roles that I play with members on a regular basis.
I'd want one of those as my role as a parent. That's pretty handy, actually.
Sure.
I've never seen a gadget like that.
Well, I mean, can't you imagine when you talk to your kids about, hey, let's talk about what True North really looks like.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, that's another conversation.
Exactly.
When we have one-to-ones, we can talk about those kinds of things.
Okay, that works.
So the third leg of the ladder is world-class speakers.
Okay.
And I spoke about that a little bit, but I actually just brought this along just as kind of a descriptor. This is just a book that I happen to have gotten just the other day called Tribal Leadership that's written by a guy by the name of Dave Logan along with a couple other people. But Dave Logan is an extremely well-known professor at University of Southern California. And he has done a lot of research along with these other folks on this whole subject, and he speaks to our groups. And the point I would make to you about this is that these kinds of speakers are the kinds of people that you might pay to go see and sit in an auditorium with 200, 400, 600 other people.
Right, up in L.A.
Up in L.A. or wherever, even they might come to San Diego. The point is that you see them in a large venue.
Right.
And yet these folks come to our groups, speak in this crucible that we call a group, and not just speak at you, but they run workshop kinds of things so that you can take away things that are really applicable to your business.
Okay.
But we are the largest speakers bureau in the United States. So we have about 2,000 speakers that speak to our groups.
Okay.
So really world-class people that bring great content. The fourth leg of the ladder is actually the Vistage Gateway, and it's kind of a catch-all term.
Okay.
And what it really includes are it includes the access that you will have to the nearly 15,000 members. In other words, you here in San Diego, you might have something that, whatever it might be, that might involve maybe sourcing something in China, being able to talk to members in Shanghai, or maybe you're thinking about something that somebody's brought something to you that there might be some interesting connection for you in Sydney, Australia, or Melbourne. Okay. Well, we've got members in all these places, and your ability to connect with those people our members tell us, is a big advantage. Secondly, we have with this robust membership and this robust speaker network, etc., we have an amazing library online, a website that has a virtual encyclopedia of content, white papers, and a variety of resources that you can refer to and you can even get for your employees and so on a variety of topics that could be of interest to you.
Sounds good.
And then the other aspect of the Gateway is just networking and connectivity. Here locally we will have, typically once a year we have what we call an all-city event, where all the members from the 300 plus members, 20 some odd groups, 27 groups are invited, and you can all get the opportunity to connect with one another locally. So it sounds to me like your business is less local and more national, but nevertheless being able to connect is a good thing.
Right, absolutely.
And then we also have just social events. In addition to that, we have member-to-member kinds of cocktail parties and what have you, and just the ability. Our members tell us that they really like, for all the value that they get in their group, they like to be able to connect with others, and so we've made that available.
Got it, okay.
So out of all this, there are really three commitments for you. And the first is the investment of time. The Vistage commitment is 1 day a month. Our groups meet 1 day per month, all day, typically 8 to 5.
Okay.
So it's a full day once a month. Secondly, you and I would meet for 2 hours in between each monthly meeting and do what we call a one-to-one. Beyond the time that you'd be involved is the investment of dollars. The initial enrollment fee is $2,000, and the monthly fee is $1,095.
Okay.
And then thirdly, you would have the commitment, let's just assume there's 14 members in your group. Once every 14 months you would host.
Oh, okay.
Because one of our guideposts is that we like to have the group be able to literally see your business.
Right, okay.
So even though you just here have a headquarters and you're...
Well, actually, we have a distribution center in town. Our largest one is here in San Diego, actually.
So having members being able to see the distribution center, see the kinds of people who are your direct reports, that kind of thing, that just creates that opportunity.
Okay.
So that's just it. 1 day, the hosting and the money.
And the money, okay.
So it sounds to me, just based on our interaction, like this is something that would be interesting to you. Do I find that you agree with that?
Yeah, no, my boss has been in YPO for years. And so I know that he goes off to his monthly meetings, and he's gotten a lot of value out of it. And there hasn't been sort of an opportunity for us to have something like that. And he's sort of talked to me about it, but the little that I know about it, as a female, I would prefer not to join YPO. So
this makes some sense.
yes.
So what I'd like, that really concludes part one.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is turn this around and then ask you some questions.
Sure.
Okay? So in the second part, first of all, what our members have told us is that the value that they get from Vistage typically falls in one of 5 areas. So those areas are first, as I had talked about before, the whole idea of decision making, being able to make better decisions, and the value of the group in that process of being able to make better decisions. And secondly, the idea of accountability. Most of our members are in a circumstance where, as the person who's the head of an organization, oftentimes in the entrepreneurial world, accountability is not as present as you might want it to be. Now, in your case, as a former CFO, maybe accountability is rather steeped in your DNA. But nevertheless...
But the environment that I'm in is still more entrepreneurial.
So, I mean, it could be an issue. It may or may not be a big issue for you. Thirdly is just the idea of ongoing growth, both personally and professionally. Being in an environment, I think we all know that in this world we're in right now where, basically our cars have kind of gone off the road and gotten in the ditch and what have you, and we're coming out of this recession, this whole notion about who we are going to be as leaders,
Right.
Both personally and professionally, is going to be huge in terms of being able to lead our businesses.
Absolutely.
And fourthly is this concept of isolation, the concept of it being lonely at the top, and the whole notion about being able to be in an environment that gives you some options, so that you just don't have to be totally consternating on your own without good folks around you.
Right, and sometimes you're too close to things to be objective, and so I like the idea of people being with a group that isn't vested the way that I am. So
Comes from a different place. And then lastly is just the whole concept of change. I think we all know change is coming at increasing lightning speed, and so being able to be in an environment that recognizes that and fosters the notion of thinking about how you can take advantage of change and not be the victim of change is a biggie. So what I'd like to do now is just ask some questions in these areas
Sure.
to learn a little bit more.
Okay.
So as you think about it, what comes to mind for you in terms of keeping you from realizing your company vision?
Lack of focus.
Lack
We
of
get
focus.
scattered. We get distracted and scattered, and trying to do too many things instead of selecting a few to do really well. That's been one of our Achilles' heels.
So, you pick too many things and then you don't get any of them done well enough. Is that what you
Or
mean?
we pick these and then we work on those, and then we 3 weeks later pick these, and we pick some of these but not all of these, and we got some new ones, and so getting and staying focused.
I was going to say, so staying on focus is another too,
Correct.
not just getting focused, but staying,
Absolutely.
keeping your priorities for some period of time and not just
Right.
changing them all the time. So what's a decision that you've made in the last 2 to 3 months that you'd love to have a do-over on?
Probably our decision to launch a group of people to go look at a new ERP system replacement. So we've got a whole bunch of resources being burned up, and in the last 2 weeks, we're thinking that, we don't necessarily want to go down that path. We want to go down a different path that would have us keep our current ERP system, but build a data warehouse that would give us a whole lot more flexibility for a lot less money. And
Wow.
trains down the tracks of
I was going to say.
demos and
Yeah.
people and scripts, and so I'd like a do-over on that.
So is that something you can back out of, you think?
Yes, but the question is going to be, when will we back out of having those people go look at stuff? Because once you get people excited and lathered up about a new system,
And they don't want to.
they don't want to hear, really? You're going to keep the current one?
And
So we got to manage expectations of
and
the
do you
people we
do you have
asked.
alignment around this whole notion that maybe you've made a mistake, or is this
with
mostly
the officer
you?
group, yes. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like that could be a biggie, because I know a little bit about ERP systems.
They're not small.
No.
Dollars or time.
Yeah, biggie. So, how big an investment is that?
We think with software and implementation, probably 600,000.
So, what about a decision, maybe two, that you're going to face in the next 2 or 3 months that's major for you?
Probably the next one would be, what other overhead do we need to continue to pull out of the expense load?
How much have you cut so far?
In the last 18 months, we've probably cut $2 to $2.5 million of annual spend. So not small. We've done a lot, but
So you've cut $2.5 million now. How much more do do you think you need to cut?
We think we need to cut at least another $1 million.
Do you know where, I mean, you have some sense of where that's going to go?
We do. We have some, we have a plan that we just started sort of working on end of last week, and we're starting to implement pieces of that plan.
So how about internal company challenges?
Yes.
Any that you can think of that you could articulate that are significant for you?
Sure. Well, actually, I'll share one that a guy and I were talking about yesterday. A lot of our line managers are not college educated. And so if you think about a distribution center, 3,000 miles from corporate, being run mostly by, we have ops leaders and we have sales leaders, and how much of a constraint is our growth contingent upon the strengths or weaknesses of those local leaders? And how much can they really grow and learn the way that, those of us here on the senior management team at corporate learn and grow? So we think that there's, we're going to have challenges getting certain people up the learning curve, and to be performing at a level we need them to be performing. Do we have the right people? And that's a big
The right folks on
challenge.
the bus in the right seat, huh?
And we're not in a position to add a bunch of overhead and bring in a bunch of high-priced talent. So that's one that's definitely a concern. We'll always struggle with just the distance between the branches and corporate. Where we have great leaders, we have great traction and great results. Where we have weaker leaders, it's mediocre at best. And so those of us that have the talent end up trying to do all the heavy lifting. So we're exhausted, working to death, and we have others, skipping around doing hardly anything. So that's definitely
I missed
a
something
challenge.
when I on the other page that kind of pertinent here, and that is, who are your direct reports? I mean, what kinds of folks report to you directly?
I have the finance team that reports directly to me, which is also an odd structure because we didn't replace my role. So we have a director of finance that manages the payables, the cash, the controller, payroll, that whole area, accounting. I have 2 guys that manage our credit, one for the East Coast, one for the eastern half of the country, one for the western half. I have our VP of HR, so the HR department reports into me. Our legal counsel reports into me. And then I have 2 one sales leader and one sales and ops leader that are based east, west, and probably dotted lines to a bunch of other people.
Yeah, because what I was actually thinking about is that these distribution folks, who would they report to?
Most of them report to our chief operating officer.
And that person reports to you?
Technically,